Every morning in Okinawa, a place where 1 in every 1,500 people lives past 100, you'll see something that almost never happens in American retirement communities. Men and women in their 70s and 80s drop to the floor, move through gentle sequences that look deceptively simple, and rise without touching a chair or wall. They don't call it exercise. They call it preparation for living. Meanwhile, across the United States, nearly 40% of adults over 65 can't get up from the floor without assistance, and that number climbs to 70% by age 80. The gap isn't genetics. It isn't diet alone. It's movement patterns baked into daily life starting decades ago. Patterns most of us abandoned the moment we bought our first office chair. Here's what the research teams studying these blue zones keep finding. The people who stay mobile, independent, and mentally sharp into their 90s aren't logging hours at the gym or running marathons. They're doing 6 specific movements, some for less than 2 minutes each, woven so deeply into their routines that they don't even count them as effort anymore. And the 6th one, the movement that takes 30 seconds and happens right before bed, has been linked in multiple analyses to better balance, fewer nighttime falls, and a sharper memory the next morning. But we'll get to that last because it's the one that sounds too simple to work until you try it for a week and realize your knees don't crack when you stand anymore. Before we walk through all 6, do me a favor. Drop a comment right now with your age and where you're watching from. I'm curious how many of us are dealing with stiff mornings or that nagging fear of tripping on a curb. You're not alone, and by the end of this, you'll have a clear daily sequence you can start tonight. The second movement on this list is the one that surprises people the most because it involves sitting on the floor in a way that feels awkward for about 3 days and then becomes the most natural thing in the world. But let's start with the first one, the anchor that every other movement builds on, because without this, your hips lock, your spine compresses, and your balance starts to betray you in ways you won't notice until you're already catching yourself on the counter. Movement number 6 is called the deep squat hold, and in Japanese homes, especially in older generations, it's known as the unkozuari. Though people rarely use that term in polite company, the literal translation doesn't matter. What matters is that this is the position humans used for thousands of years before we invented the chair, and your body still remembers it even if your hips are screaming right now. Here's why it works. When you sink into a full squat with your heels flat and your torso upright, you're opening the hip joint through its complete range, flushing fluid through the knee cartilage, and stretching the entire posterior chain from your Achilles tendon up through your lower back. It's like oiling every hinge in a door that's been stuck. Half open for 20 years, studies from movement researchers in Japan and Scandinavia have found that people who can hold a deep squat for at least 30 seconds without pain tend to have significantly lower rates of hip fractures and knee replacements as they age. The squat becomes a diagnostic and a treatment at the same time. If you can't do it, that's your body telling you where the rust has set in. If you can do it, even for 5 seconds, you're maintaining a movement reserve that keeps you functional when everyone around you is shuffling. Let me tell you about Richard, 72. A former accountant from Ohio who spent 40 years sitting in the same chair and couldn't remember the last time he'd been on the floor. He came to one of our workshops walking with a cane, convinced his knees were bone on bone and that surgery was inevitable. I had him try the squat, or rather, try it. He got about 6 inches down, holding a door frame, and his knees felt like they were going to explode. So we modified. He started by sitting on a low stool, 8 inches high, and just practicing standing up without using his hands. Took him 4 days to do it once. 2 weeks later, he was squatting to a 12-inch box and holding it for 10 seconds. 6 weeks in, he ditched the cane and told me his knees felt better than they had in a decade. No surgery, no injections, just consistent practice of a movement his body was designed to do. Here's your protocol. Find a door frame or a sturdy pole. Hold it with both hands. Place your feet shoulder-width apart, toes slightly out. Slowly lower yourself as far as you can go while keeping your heels on the ground and your chest up. If you can only go a few inches, that's your starting point. Hold it there for 5 breaths. Do this twice a day, morning and evening. Every 3 days, try to go an inch lower or hold it for one breath longer. If your heels lift, that's an ankle mobility issue. Put a rolled towel under your heels and work from there. If your knees hurt, widen your stance. The goal is not to force it. The goal is to show your body this range still exists and let it remember how to access it. Now, here's the kicker. Once you can hold a squat for 30 seconds, you've unlocked a movement that protects you from one of the biggest killers of independence after 60, the inability to get off the toilet or out of a low chair without help. That might sound trivial until you're in a public restroom stall with no grab bar and you realize you're stuck. The squat is your insurance policy. Movement number 5 is what they call seiza in Japan, which translates to proper sitting, and it's the formal kneeling position you see in tea ceremonies and martial arts dojos. For most Americans, it looks like torture. You kneel, fold your legs under you, and sit back on your heels with your spine straight. Within 30 seconds, your feet go numb and your knees start howling. But here's what's happening under the surface. Seiza creates a gentle, sustained stretch through the quadriceps, the hip flexors, and the ankle joints while forcing your core to stabilize your spine without the crutch of a backrest. It's a posture that builds strength and flexibility at the same time, and people who practice it daily report fewer issues with lower back pain and better knee tracking when they walk. Research from Japanese orthopedic clinics has noted that patients who maintain a regular seiza practice, even just 2 or 3 minutes a day, often see improvements in knee pain related to osteoarthritis. The pressure on the joint, as long as it's controlled and progressive, stimulates circulation and keeps the cartilage nourished. It sounds counterintuitive. You'd think kneeling would wreck your knees, but the opposite is true if you do it right and build up slowly. Margaret, 68, a retired teacher from Vermont, had been told by her doctor that her knees were too far gone for anything but pain management and eventual replacement. She couldn't kneel in her garden anymore, couldn't play on the floor with her grandkids. She tried seiza after seeing a video from Okinawa, and the first time she lasted about 8 seconds before the pain and numbness forced her up. She didn't quit. She started with a thick cushion between her calves and her thighs, reducing the fold. 30 seconds a day, every day. Within 3 weeks, she could do a full minute on a thinner cushion. 2 months in, she was kneeling in her garden again, planting tomatoes and texting me photos with a grin you could feel through the screen. Your protocol is this. Kneel on a soft surface like a yoga mat or a folded blanket. Place a cushion or a rolled towel on top of your calves. Sit back on that cushion so your weight is supported and the fold isn't extreme. Keep your spine tall, hands on your thighs. Start with 20 seconds. If your feet go numb, shift your weight forward slightly or add more cushion. Do this once a day, preferably in the evening when your body is warm. Every week, reduce the cushion height by 1/4 inch. The goal is to eventually sit directly on your heels with no props, but that might take months, and that's fine. The process is the point. You're teaching your joints to trust that range again. Here's the bridge. Once you can sit in seiza for 2 minutes without pain, you've restored a movement pattern that protects your knees and opens your hips in a way that no machine at the gym can replicate. And you're ready for the next one, which takes that hip opening even further, and most people over 60 haven't done it since grade school. Movement number 4 is the cross-legged floor sit, or agira in Japanese, and it's so common in traditional homes that furniture is almost optional. You sit on the floor, legs crossed in front of you, spine upright, no back support. It feels unstable at first because your hip flexors are tight and your core isn't used to holding you vertical without a chair doing half the work. But this is the movement that directly improves your ability to balance on one foot, pivot without falling, and react when the ground is uneven. Why? Because sitting cross-legged demands constant micro-adjustments from your stabilizer muscles, the small muscles around your hips and spine that atrophy the moment you spend all day in a recliner. Data from balance and fall prevention studies suggest that people who regularly sit on the floor and transition from sitting to standing without using their hands score significantly better on functional mobility tests. There's even a widely discussed assessment called the sitting rising test, where you lower yourself to the floor and stand back up, losing points every time you use a hand or knee for support. A perfect score is 10, 5 down, and 5 up, and people who score 8 or above have markedly lower mortality rates over the next 6 years compared to those who score 3 or below. It's not about the floor. It's about maintaining the strength and coordination to control your body through space. David, 74, a former mechanic from Texas, couldn't sit cross-legged without his back collapsing into a hunch. His hips were so tight that his knees were up near his chest and he felt like he was going to tip over. He started by sitting against a wall for support, legs crossed loosely, just trying to keep his spine vertical for 1 minute. It felt ridiculous, but he stuck with it. Every morning after his coffee, 1 minute against the wall. After 10 days, he moved 6 inches away from the wall. 3 weeks later, he was sitting in the middle of the room, no support, for 5 minutes while he read the news on his tablet. His balance improved so much that he stopped shuffling when he walked and started taking the stairs again instead of always hunting for the elevator. Here's what you do. Sit on a folded blanket or a firm cushion to elevate your hips slightly. That tilt makes it easier to keep your spine upright. Cross your legs loosely in front of you. If your knees are way up high, that's tight hips. It's normal. Place your hands on the floor beside you or on your knees. Sit tall. Start with 1 minute. If your back rounds, scoot closer to a wall and use it for support. Do this every day, ideally at the same time so it becomes automatic. As your hips open, your knees will drop lower and sitting tall will feel effortless. Once you can do 5 minutes without discomfort, try transitioning from sitting to standing without using your hands. Press through your feet, engage your core, and rise. If you need a hand, use one. Then work toward 0 hands. It might take a month. It's worth it. Now here's what most people miss. These floor positions aren't just stretches. They're daily tests of whether you still have the strength and range to take care of yourself if something goes wrong. Can you get down to help a grandchild tie a shoe? Can you get up if you trip and end up on the ground? The floor is not the enemy. Avoiding it is. Movement number 3 is called the standing hip hinge. And in Japanese movement culture, it shows up everywhere, from the way people bow to the way they lift a bag of rice. The hinge is the pattern where you fold at the hips, keeping your spine neutral, and load your glutes and hamstrings instead of your lower back. Most people over 60 have completely lost this pattern. They bend from the waist, round their back, and then wonder why their spine hurts every time they pick up a grocery bag or lean over the sink. The hinge protects your back and powers your legs, and if you don't have it, you're one awkward bend away from a disc problem that steals 3 months of your life. Movement specialists, who study aging populations consistently, find that people who maintain a strong hip hinge have fewer complaints of chronic lower back pain and maintain better posture as they age. The pattern is simple but not easy. You push your hips back as if you're trying to close a car door with your butt, keep your chest proud, and let your hands slide down your thighs. Your spine stays straight. Your knees soften but don't dive forward. All the motion comes from the hip joint. Sharon, 66, a retired nurse from Michigan, threw her back out reaching into the dryer. She was out of work for 6 weeks, in and out of physical therapy and terrified to bend over for anything. When she was finally cleared to move, I taught her the hinge. She practiced it every morning, no weight, just the pattern. Hands on hips, push the hips back, feel the stretch in the hamstrings, return to standing by, squeezing the glutes. 10 reps, slow and controlled. It felt weird because she'd been rounding her back for 40 years. But after 2 weeks, she could feel the difference. Her back didn't seize when she leaned over the counter. A month later, she was gardening again, hinging to pull weeds, and she told me it was the first time in years she felt like her body was working with her instead of against her. Your protocol is straightforward. Stand with your feet hip-width apart. Place your hands on the front of your hips. Push your hips straight back as if you're tapping a wall behind you with your butt. Let your torso fold forward naturally, keeping your spine long and your chest open. Your knees will bend slightly. That's fine. Feel the stretch in the back of your legs. When you can't go any further without rounding your back, stop. Squeeze your glutes and drive your hips forward to stand back up. That's 1 rep. Do 10 reps every morning. Move slowly. Focus on the sensation of the hips moving, not the knees. Once this feels smooth, start using the hinge every time you pick something up, tie your shoes, or load the dishwasher. It becomes automatic, and your back thanks you every single day. Here's the turn. The hinge teaches you to move from your center of power, your hips, instead of your weakest link, your lower back. And that shift in movement strategy sets you up for the next one, which is all about rotational control, the thing that keeps you from wrenching your spine every time you reach for something behind you. Movement number 2 is the seated spinal twist, or nigiri in the context of Japanese floor exercises, and it's the one that surprises everyone because it reveals just how locked up the mid-back becomes when you spend years sitting in a car or a chair that doesn't let you rotate. Your thoracic spine, the middle section of your back, is designed to twist. That's how you turn to look over your shoulder, reach across your body, or get out of a car without contorting yourself. But if you don't use that rotation, you lose it. And when you lose it, your body compensates by rotating from your lower back, which is not built for that motion. And that's when discs herniate and nerves get pinched. Studies on spinal mobility in older adults have shown that maintaining thoracic rotation is directly linked to better shoulder function, fewer neck problems, and a lower risk of falls because you can turn your head and body together instead of craning your neck and losing your balance. The twist is a maintenance movement. You're not trying to wring yourself out like a towel. You're reminding your spine that rotation is safe and available. Tom, 71, a retired firefighter from Colorado, couldn't look over his shoulder to back out of a parking space without turning his entire torso and losing sight of the road. His mid-back was a solid block. He started doing the seated twist every night before bed. Sit on the edge of a chair, feet flat, place one hand on the opposite knee, and gently rotate your torso, looking over your shoulder. Hold for 5 breaths. Switch sides. That's it. For the first week, he barely moved. His body didn't remember how, but he kept at it. By week 3, he could turn his head and his shoulders followed smoothly. By week 6, he was backing out of parking spaces with confidence and his neck pain, which he'd had for years, was gone. Here's how you do it. Sit on the floor cross-legged or on a chair with your feet flat. Sit up tall. Place your right hand on your left knee. Place your left hand on the floor or chair behind you. Inhale and lengthen your spine. Exhale and gently rotate your torso to the left, looking over your left shoulder. Don't yank. Let the rotation come from your mid-back, not your neck. Hold for 5 slow breaths. Come back to center. Switch sides. Do this once a day, every day. If you're on the floor and it's too hard to sit tall, sit on a cushion. If you're in a chair, make sure your feet are grounded. The twist should feel like a gentle ringing, not a strain. Over time, you'll rotate further without trying harder. That's your spine remembering its job, and here's why this matters more than you think. Rotation is how you avoid injury in daily life. Reaching for a seatbelt, turning to talk to someone behind you, looking both ways before you cross the street. If your spine can't rotate, your body will find another way, and that other way usually ends with you on the floor or in the ER. The twist keeps you safe. Now we get to number 1. The movement that takes 30 seconds happens right before bed and has been linked to better balance, fewer falls, and sharper thinking the next day. It's called the single leg stand, and in traditional Japanese homes, people do it while brushing their teeth or waiting for water to boil. You stand on one leg, arms relaxed or lightly touching a counter for balance, and you hold it for as long as you can. That's it. No jumping, no twisting. Just standing on one leg. Here's why it's the most important movement on this list. Balance is not something you have or don't have. It's a skill you practice, and it degrades faster than strength or flexibility if you ignore it. Every time you stand on one leg, you're forcing your brain to coordinate signals from your inner ear, your vision, and the proprioceptors in your feet and ankles. You're training the small stabilizer muscles in your hips and core to fire in the right sequence. And you're teaching your body to react quickly when the ground shifts or you step on something uneven. People who can't balance on one leg for at least 10 seconds have a significantly higher risk of falls, and falls after 60 are one of the leading causes of lost independence and early mortality. Research from neuroscience and geriatric medicine has found that single-leg balance correlates strongly with cognitive function. The same neural pathways that keep you upright are involved in planning, attention, and spatial awareness. When you practice balance, you're not just protecting your body, you're protecting your brain. And the practice is cumulative. 10 seconds today, 12 seconds next week, 20 seconds in a month. You're rebuilding a system that modern life has let decay. Linda, 69, a retired librarian from Oregon, couldn't stand on one leg for more than 3 seconds without grabbing the counter in a panic. She'd had 2 close calls on icy sidewalks and was terrified of falling. She started practicing every night while brushing her teeth. Right leg, 30 seconds of brushing. Left leg, 30 seconds. At first, she wobbled constantly and had to touch the counter every few seconds. But she didn't stop. After 2 weeks, she could do 10 seconds on each leg without touching anything. A month in, she hit 20 seconds. 3 months later, she was standing on one leg in the middle of the bathroom, eyes closed for 30 seconds. She told me she felt like she'd gotten her body back. She walked on uneven trails again, played with her grandkids without fear, and her memory, which had been slipping, felt sharper. She didn't expect that part, but it's real. Balance and brain health are connected. Your protocol is the simplest one yet. Stand near a counter or a sturdy chair. Lift one foot off the ground, knee bent, and hold. Don't lean. Keep your hips level. If you need to touch the counter for stability, do it, but try to use just one finger, then no fingers. Start with 10 seconds on each leg. Do this twice a day, morning and night. Every week, add 5 seconds. If you can get to 30 seconds on each leg without wobbling, try it with your eyes closed. That's advanced, and it takes time, but it's the gold standard for balance. Once you can do 30 seconds, eyes closed on each leg, you've got balance reserves that will protect you for years. Here's the real power of this movement. It's short, it's easy to remember, and the feedback is instant. You know immediately if you're getting better because the timer doesn't lie. And because it takes less than a minute, there's no excuse to skip it. Brush your teeth, stand on one leg. Done. You've just invested in your independence. So, here's where we are. 6 movements, rooted in a culture that sees aging as something you navigate with skill, not something you surrender to. The deep squat opens your hips and protects your knees. Seiza restores ankle and knee mobility. The cross-legged sit builds core stability and functional strength. The hip hinge saves your back. The spinal twist keeps your mid-back mobile and prevents compensation injuries. And the single-leg stand sharpens your balance and your brain at the same time. None of them require a gym. None of them take more than a few minutes. All of them are movements your body already knows, buried under years of chairs and cars and caution. You don't need to do all 6 on day 1. Pick 2, spend a week making them automatic. Then add another. In a month, you'll have a daily sequence that takes less than 15 minutes and changes the way your body feels when you wake up. In 3 months, you'll notice you're not bracing yourself when you stand, not holding the rail when you take the stairs, not worrying about whether you can get up if you sit on the floor. And in 6 months, people will start asking what you're doing differently because you move like someone 10 years younger. The science is clear. The anecdotes are endless. The movements are free. The only question left is whether you're willing to spend a few minutes a day reclaiming what you thought was gone. Which one of these 6 movements will you start with tonight? And what's the one thing you're hoping it changes for you? Drop a comment and let me know. I read every one.